Hi guys, today's video is about a subject which is not really that much talked about, and a subject that to people it can be heartbreaking. The subject of today's video is self-harming. Now, what's gonna happen is when my parents find this video, they're gonna tell me to take it off, but the answer would be no, because I'm doing this video to raise awareness of why people do it, and it's not because self-harmers are brushed under the category of attention seeking, whereas it's not attention seeking, it's plainly getting out your frustration. So I'm gonna give you lots of information on why. Reason number one, there always has to be a trigger factor for self-harming. Say you have a traumatic experience happen to in your life, something has to trigger the original depression or reason for self-harming. Mine would be my granddad died 4 years ago. He was my best friend, loved him to pieces, and when he died it was like a massive heartbreak for me. And as well as my granddad dying, I was being bullied at school. So I had two of them going on in my head. I had the heartbreak and then I had the anger. And I just wanted to get it out of my system. I went into the toilet and I found a piece of plastic, and before I knew it I was scratching away at my wrist. After a while it went numb, so I felt like I needed to carry on doing it. But luckily for me, one of my really good friends found me and he gave me the right help. But a lot of people don't have that help. A lot of people don't have anyone to turn to. Luckily for me, my friend went through the same thing I did over again. And the thing is when someone doesn't have someone to turn to, it gets worse and the frustration builds up inside because obviously there is no way for them to let it out. Like counsellors and stuff like that, people don't want to turn to counsellors. Um, people want to have friends they can turn to. But number two is the reasons why. Um, a lot of people when they self-harm think that if they tell someone that they will be instantly judged by people or family members or anything like that, so they keep it a secret. Or they start wearing, like when they do it, they wear long jumpers to hide it, and stuff like that. And what people need is they need people to turn to, because for me, I find it easy to talk to friends about how I'm feeling. Like I have a good friend called Bethany, and she's actually kept me sane for the majority of the past couple of months. Without her, I probably would end up. I probably would have ended up in a how would I put it, in a more horrible situation. Right now, I'm ish mentally stable, hence why I'm doing this video. If I wasn't, I would probably do this video, and then I would go and self-harm. But I'm not going to do that because this video is to help people, not to encourage people to do it. Uh, um, so yeah, there is always a trigger factor. Um, so, and the number two is being brushed under the category of attention seeking. Now, the reason why people think it's attention seeking is because obviously when you self-harm with, say, a razor blade for instance, you are left with a scar, and people think that people do it because it's like, oh look at me, I've got this fancy scar here, oh look at me, I've just done this, oh look at me, I've just done that, I've got scars everywhere, look at me. But that's not the reason why. People do it because people like the pain, people think they deserve the pain, people think that they're worthless, or people like the sight of their own blood, depends. They don't do it to attract the attention from other people. Hence, when they self-harm, they do it in places where are not visible. Like, for me, it would be my legs normally. Because I wear long jeans, I never wear shorts or skirts, or when I do wear shorts or skirts, I wear tights with them, so you can't really see what's on my legs. I have then made the mistake before of doing it on my arms, but luckily my arms have healed, and I've been fortunate enough to get tattoos to cover them. Or other people would, if people wear long sleeve t-shirts, they would do it on their arms, top of their arms. But they don't do it for attention. They are people that seriously need help. It's self-harming is a cry for help. People need the help, and people can't find a way to ask for help. So I think some people do it because they know eventually someone's going to find out, and they hope that people will help them by finding it. But some people just carry on and carry on and carry on doing it, and they don't get the help, and they end up being so low in mood that there's no way out of it, which often ends in being sectioned onto a mental ward or committing suicide. Because of it, people self-harm because of cyberbullying, because of grieving, family life. All of those categories can cause people to self-harm. Now, I'm going to discuss, basically my story of self-harming, how it progressed. So, obviously, I've already told you how it started, my granddad dying, yada, yada, yada. But then, as time grew on, I was beginning to get more bullied at school, so I did it more often. I moved to a town where I had no friends, which was kind of my own doing, because I failed to go to any social groups or anything like that. I didn't like the idea of meeting people because I have anxiety and I don't like being in crowded places. So I felt alone, as I thought I couldn't talk to my mum or anyone about this thing that was going on in my head. So it carried on bottling up and bottling up and bottling up. So finally I would self-harm using different objects. Now, I'm not going to name the objects because then it will give, I'm not going to be judgmental, but maybe give people ideas on different ways to self-harm. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying everyone in the world should just quit self-harming, because I know how hard it is to quit. And luckily for me, I haven't done it for a few months. Well, I can't remember the last time I did it. But anyway, not the point. So yeah, and then obviously, I went into a mother and baby unit. There, I felt like I had no one to talk to. I didn't like the staff members there at all. I thought they were arrogant and obnoxious. There was only one girl that I ever talked to in there, and she was a really nice girl. Yeah, she's my age, and then, but I still ultimately felt alone, so I began doing it there. And it got to a point where I was so low in mood because I had depression when I was pregnant. Then when Benny was born, obviously carried on and carried on and carried on. And on and on and on. Hence you get the picture. So yeah, that's my story. Number 3 would be... what would number 3 be? Number 3 would be actually not wanting to talk about it. Like, some people self-harm and just don't want to talk about it, because they think that they are beyond help, in a way. and they don't think they can be helped. But everyone can be helped in the right way. Would it be antidepressants? Would it be counselling? Would it be talking to friends or talking to family if that's what you prefer? So yeah, there's plenty of ways to get help. What should I talk about next? So we've been through the reasons why people self-harm, but what do they do it for? Well, sometimes people take steps into how they go about things, like people who are strong can maybe, before they self-harm, they get into an angry situation, they can try deep breathing or they can try different exercises. But some people just get into a situation where they cannot think of another way out of the predicament that they're in, and they think the only way is to cut themselves or cause bruises on themselves. Like, cutting is not the only way of self-harming. Maybe doing a couple of those, or doing a couple of those, or I don't know, smashing objects against your head. That's probably one of the most common ones. Cutting yourself with razor blades, that's the most obvious, like, cutting technique, because the reasons why razor blades are so popular is because they're so, like, thin but so sharp, so it's a quick cut, and so you don't have to cut through the skin. It's just done, done, done. It's so easy to do, and it's pain free. Well, it's not pain free because it does hurt, but it doesn't take long to do it. That's why it's the most popular. Other ways of self-harming would be probably hitting yourself is the most popular one out there that is not cutting yourself, or punching walls. That's another alternative. But people cannot express their anger in any other way apart from punching yourself or punching walls or punching other people, which isn't a very good idea. I'd rather punch walls than punch someone else. Yeah. But sometimes, self-harming ultimately is not a bad thing. It's definitely not a bad thing, because, for instance, I'm going to give you an example of what self-harming feels like. Say if you're a drug addict or you smoke, the nicotine you have inside, when you desperately need a fag but can't have one, you get really, really angry and agitated and just feel shit and horrible, and you need nicotine. You desperately need it until you eventually, like, get really stressed out and you really need one. That's what self-harming's like. The anger builds up and the frustration builds up until finally you have to do something about it. So that's what self-harming feels like, because self-harming, believe it or not, is actually an addiction. An addiction that is really, really hard to give up, because when you start doing it, it feels, to be honest, it feels so good to get it out of your system, and it feels amazing to let it all out. That um, that sometimes you just don't want to give up because it's the only thing that can help. At the time, people often ask me, do I regret self-harming? Do I regret doing this? Do I regret doing that? The answer is no. I do not regret something that helped me at the time. People say, but what about your scars? Do you care about your scars? Do you care that they're visible? I'm like, no, because they're a part of me. They're a part of who I am, and they're always going to be there. So why get all miffed and niffed up about it? You know, It helped me at the time. I don't regret my scars. I would never do plastic surgery because there is no guarantee that I will not self-harm again. Because maybe in the future, I don't know. I'm not planning on doing it, but whatever happens, happens, doesn't it? I mean, you can't guarantee that, a smoker, when they say they're going to give up, you cannot guarantee that person will never have another fag in their entire life. So there you go. It's like when you're on drugs. Oh, I'm going to give up drugs. I'm going to give up that. I'm going to give up that. I'm going to give up that. Well, there is no guarantee. There is no 100% guarantee that that person will never take drugs, never take them or touch drugs ever again. Would it be going from speed and then cutting down to a bit of dope? There is no guarantee that that person will not touch a single bit of dope again. And that's what self-harming is. There is definitely no guarantee. But yeah, self-harming is like a really touchy-feely subject that is widely avoided. Like people look at a self-harm and go, ew, them scars are disgusting. Ew, why did you do that? Ew, that's disgusting. Ew, look at her. Ew, look at her. And I just look at them people and think, you are such... Oh, you are absolute arseholes, And you can say, oh, you don't fucking understand what I'm going through. Oh, you don't know this, you don't know that. And the answer is, well, no, you don't know that. Because you don't have their thoughts or feelings. Because your brain has different ways of coping with things. Like, some people can do deep breathing. Some people can write down how they feel. Some people turn to self-harming. Different people have different ways of coping, and that's what people need to realise, is that not everyone is the same. If everyone were the same, the world would be a very boring place. So yeah, like people say to me, oh, there's people in the world dying of cancer, and you're there self-harming by choice. You're literally hurting yourself, even though this person's got cancer. I'm like, well, I do feel really bad for the person who's got cancer, but they're not me, and they don't cope the way I do. I self-harm because I want an away escape from all this. And they're like to me, well, you do know you can kill yourself by doing that, can't you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm well aware of that, but I don't do it in places where you could ultimately kill yourself. I mean, my wrist, for instance, I don't do it on my wrist because I know there's a major artery in there, and you can bleed to death with your wrist. I don't do it near my neck. So, people are so judgmental, and it actually really annoys me as to how people can be judgmental because, everyone in their life has problems, but it's how you deal with those problems. And a lot of people just dismiss self-harming. They don't really talk about it, and it's not talking about it that makes people do these kind of things. If people say, I'm the go-to person here, like, people some people come to me with their problems. I'm an open person. I am willing to listen to other people's problems. I am willing to sit down for about 3 hours and talk about anything just to stop the person from self-harming. But some people are really tight-knit and don't like talking about self-harming. Say I was someone who didn't, someone came to me, oh, I feel like self-harming, and I'll go, you stupid bitch, what the fuck are you doing that for? That's awful. That'll make the person go and do it, because then I'm making them angry and I'm making them feel like the size of a pea. I'm making them feel worthless, and making them want to do it more, because now they've got the motivation to do it. Whereas if I sit down and go, right, what are the reasons for you doing this? Is there any ways that I can help? Then they'll sit down with me and they will talk to me about it rather than going on doing it. And most of the time that works. Listening is the key. Talking is the key. You give and you receive. You sit down, you talk to someone about their problems. In a couple of months, you're feeling the same way. You're feeling a bit shit. You need someone to talk to. That person who you helped before will then want to return the favour and will help you with your advice, with your wanting help. And that's how it works. You see, people are really funny. It helps talking to people. It really does help. And one more person I help makes me feel better. Like if someone were to come to me tomorrow and say, Ebony, I feel like shit. Ebony, I feel like doing this. Ebony, I feel like doing that. And I am able to stop them from doing it, I feel so much better in myself. And I know the depression's not going to go away from me, but me helping other people distracts me from my problems. And I love helping people. I think it's the best feeling in the world. So there you go.